What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Water Cooler Talk. My name is Caleb Turner, and I'm a sports writer at KSL.com. It is January 26th, 2025, and I'm joined once again for the second week in a row by our good friend Jackson Payne, who is in a state of mourning at the moment for his Washington Commanders. The left hand remains up, but it has come to an end for our dear Commanders, as it has come to an end for our dear Buffalo Bills as well, as it will be, unfortunately, a Eagles Chiefs rematch once again in the Super Bowl. How are you feeling tonight, Jackson?
To quote the Honorable Padme Amidala, so this is how democracy dies, to thunderous applause. Although I don't think anyone's really applauding the the results of
Yeah,
the championship.
seriously.
The Super Bowl America wanted was denied from us, but as a Washington fan, my hope remains in the highest state it's ever been. I'm excited for the future, but it was a bummer to get throttled by a rival in the Eagles today. But you know what? I'm just happy that for the ride this year. And I mean, I wish both teams could lose the Super Bowl, but I guess you got to pull for Andy Reid to get the three-peat because
Yeah,
nothing good. I mean, I hope I don't offend any of our listeners. Nothing good happens when Philadelphia wins anything, unless it's Rocky Balboa, right? Like
exactly.
I think we can all rally around not liking Philly.
I think I might have seen that some Commanders fans had like defamed the Rocky statue in Philadelphia. Did you, was that, is that a real thing that happened before this game?
Fake news. So
Okay, okay, just making sure.
so in the past, fans of the teams that the Eagles are going to play in the playoffs will do that to the Rocky statue, and it's like a
Mm,
curse. So the Eagles always
yeah.
teams, and so it was either an Eagles fan or a Packers fan that did it and made it
Ugh.
look like the Commanders fan. The problem was here was the big like tell that that wasn't legit. They were putting a bunch of merchandise for the old team name,
Ah,
yeah, the
yes,
the one that probably shouldn't be said, but
yes.
awesome logos and stuff. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, great art.
yeah, great art. So yeah, all those logos and all that merchandise was being put on it, and like, I mean, every Washington fan who still owns that kind of merchandise is like holding on to it just because it's
Mm,
valuable and like it's
yeah.
not you can't find it anywhere. So no one would willingly put it onto a Rocky Balboa statue to one curse the team and two never get it back. So fake news, but no matter what, we just couldn't stay Saquon today. Jaden was good, but you can't really. I mean, you can't do. Good things won't happen when you fumble three times and you give up 55. So
So what
it's a
you're
bummer,
saying,
but the future's bright.
the future's bright. So what you're saying is, all the merch was Red Hogs merch, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, go Hogs. Yes.
Yeah, go Hogs. Go yeah. Go old team name. That definitely I don't have a picture of right behind me.
Good thing we're audio only.
Uh,
It's good. We started off with a loss, a couple losses here, and we're gonna be talking about a lot of losses on this episode, unfortunately, with the exception of the BYU men's basketball team, which is why Jackson's joining us once again. We will get into what the Cougars have been up to here in a little bit, but first, some losses. The Utah Jazz have lost five in a row and eight of their last nine, and they now have the second worst record in the entire NBA, which means they have great odds at getting Cooper Flag. So great things happening in the Utah Jazz organization. Keep doing what you're doing, guys. You're gonna get a great draft pick. It'll be the best draft pick since like before Malone and Stockton. So it'll be a good place for the Jazz. You just have to keep holding on for just a few months more in time to get to June or a May, I guess, when those ping pong balls roll around and you hopefully get that number one pick. The hockey club, however, also picking up some losses, which is what they don't want to do as a growing young team trying to make the playoffs. They went 1-2 on their most recent road trip with two consecutive losses at Winnipeg and Ottawa. However, flipping the script a bit here, Utah State men's basketball team staying hot, recovering from that loss down at UNLV. Pair of dominant wins, double-digit wins, 20 plus points over Nevada and Air Force, moved to 18-2, which then brings us to our other men's basketball teams in the state, which would be Utah and BYU. We had Jackson on here last week talking about the rivalry game at the Huntsman last week, which Utah won in overtime. However, since that day, over the last week, their paths have diverged a bit, and BYU has won two in a row, and Utah has lost two in a row. BYU with a couple good wins first, Big 12 road win of the season at Colorado, and then coming home to beat Cincinnati. I believe you were at that Cincinnati game. Jackson, thoughts on just the improvement since we last talked that this team's been able to kind of turn things around a bit?
yeah, man, it's night and day. I think last time I was on last week, we were talking about is BYU ever going to win a road game? in the Big 12. And just if you can't win at Utah, it was just a matter of like who on earth are you going to beat? And they beat Colorado, and granted, Colorado's not very good. They did beat UConn earlier in the year, but I feel like that was more exception than rule. Um, they still haven't won a Big 12 game. But that second half against Colorado, they figured something out. I mean, they pushed the tempo offensively, and Yegor turned into a different player. They played a lot of small ball lineups with Boskovic at the five, and I feel like those are kind of looks that you're going to be seeing more from BYU going forward. And you saw that tempo continue yesterday against Cincinnati, and Yegor is just. I think that there's still an injury factor there. I think the injury that he had against Providence that kept him out for about a month. I think that's still a lingering factor because I mean he was unbelievable during non-conference, and then that Providence game happens on the first play of the game. His knee gets banged up. He sits for a couple games, and then Big 12 play happens. And instead of I mean you're going against cupcakes for lack of a better term. You played a few good teams and you played well, but when you sit out as long as you do and then get thrown right back into the grind and it's the Big 12 schedule, it's kind of a rude awakening. It's hard to adjust right back into that. And so uh Yegor, I think the injury thing is still bothering him, but he looks so much better the last two games as BYU's kind of changed this offensive tempo. He's so much more effective. His shooting, he's just confidence wise. I mean, he's an 18-year-old. He's on the other side of the world. He's learning college basketball for the first time. And we've talked about him being better suited for the NBA than college right now, but you're seeing that NBA readiness in his college game. And his playmaking is phenomenal. His shooting has been better. He hit three-pointers last night, which was as many as he hit since the end of November, right? Like,
Wow.
his it's been unbelievable just the turnaround. And this BYU team relies so heavily on him. The offense is so centered around Yegor. And so him being locked in and kind of being on is so big for this team. And if they can unlock him going forward, I mean it's a dangerous team.
Yeah, I was looking back at the BYU schedule for the last few games on ESPN, and it's cool. They do like for each game they'll tell you who had the most points, most rebounds, each assist, just right next to the game, and it's been pretty consistently Richie Saunders most points. I just forgot his name, the big man.
Aba,
Keba Keita, thank you, most rebounds, and then Yegor Demon most assists. And in assists, I mean, he's had 6, 7+ assists in like all but like two of their last 6 or 7 games. So pretty impressive streak there. I mean, he's become consistent again, which I think is probably the most important thing they could ask for at this point. And consistently making great passes, making great reads that are connecting guys. And kind of like you said, improving the pace and just like the overall flow of the offense. Because at times, man, like especially in that Utah game, it just like things stall out and they just don't know where to go for a shot. So definitely looking a lot better on that end. And I have to give credit to Utah. They played a couple really good teams. Went on the road to Houston, ranked great team in Houston. They did lose by like 40 points, so not great there. And then they come home just to play Baylor, who has another potential top 5, top 10 pick in Edgecombe. Another just I mean a great program at Baylor, obviously. So it's two tough opponents for Utah that had that been BYU, probably maybe BYU probably loses those 2 games as well. So it might just be a scheduling thing. So I want to give credit there where credit is due. They at least showed up, especially in the Baylor game, showed up. But a couple bad losses there, but it's still interesting. How things kind of diverged there, and BYU hoping to make a bit of a run here in Big 12 play as they fight for potentially get into like a top 5, top 6 spot or whatever that might be as we get into February just about.
that's crazy. I mean, the season's flying by. But I think if BYU slips into the dance in March, which I think they're, I think it's headed that way now. Um, we're gonna look at that second half at Colorado as kind of the turning point. That was just that was like an exorcism. I think I said on Twitter, like
Mm,
the what they were able to do, just so much frustration came pouring out. They were so much more effective. It was a different team. And I think you saw that against Cincinnati. And that Cincinnati team, they were ranked sixth nationally in 3-point defense. They were only giving up 28% shooting from behind the arc. And they were a top 10 team defensively just overall. And BYU whooped them. They scored 80
mm,
points. They shot over 60% for three for the first time since 2021. They had their best. I mean, they went 11 for 15 in the second half from three. And I know that's not like you can't count on that every single time, obviously. I mean, BYU never shoots 60% from three, right? But like I think the fact that BYU did that as a young team against a defensive unit as good as Cincinnati's is just that's such a big confidence boost that you can go. I mean, Cincinnati's not like the cream of the crop in the Big 12, but defensively they're right there. And so, hey, you can go, you can take on a Baylor, you can take on a Kansas. Like you don't have to. I mean, what you saw against Houston earlier this season when BYU was just overmatched and joyless and flat. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the case anymore. I think BYU's kind of they figured out their identity. Like Richie Saunders is their best player or their most productive player, but Yegor is their most important player. And
Mm.
so both of those guys have to kind of lead the offense. And then it's kind of a offense by committee at that point. Maybe you get Trevin Nell hitting some threes. Maybe it's Foose or Kava going down low in the post and making magic happen. Maybe it's Dawson Baker creating his own shots from three levels. There's a lot. I mean, Cannon Catchings when he's on, he's incredible. He's going to be a first round pick at some point. Um, this BYU team is tapping into something, and I'm really impressed that they've took this Utah loss and turned it into a positive where you go into Colorado, you have that second half, you go into Cincinnati. I mean, you come back home against Cincinnati and just throttle them. And I like what they're headed. I like where they're headed down the stretch now. And kind of going back to Utah's point, it's a bummer to me that Utah team couldn't use the BYU win as a springboard because I really liked what I saw from Utah in that game. I remember telling you last week, like I could see that team being like a sneaky Final Four in the Big 12 tournament. Like they could make the conference semifinal just by the way they play. And I liked what I saw. And I mean that BYU win should have awoken something in them, right? And it didn't. And so it's a bummer to see because I like some of the pieces on that team. But like you said, they played tough. They had some tough competition, and maybe they can get it turned around. But it just feels like a tournament appearance is just going to elude them. Just it's not a great team, and I hope they could figure something out, and it's just not going to seem that way.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny on the broadcast for BYU last night. They were saying that they were like, last time BYU played Cincinnati last season, they took 35 threes. And I was like, oh yeah, that was like Mark Pope's thing last year was like we're gonna take 35 threes every game.
Yeah.
And like things have changed a little bit, I would say. Like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they're taking 35 threes a game. That just feels like a lot. Um, but so yeah, it's and then you got Mark Pope, losing games at Kentucky. So interesting, interesting how the tables turn a bit. But we'll chat a little more also about what those two teams in BYU and Utah have coming up because it is very interesting. But lastly, for our last part of the recap will be Utah women's basketball. They were down in Provo, second edition here of this rivalry game. First we had the men's, now we had the women down in Provo, and Utah won to move to 15-5 on the season. And that takes us to our look ahead for the upcoming week. Jazz have a 4-game week. 4-game homestand begins starting Thursday for the Jazz against Rudy Gobert, our good friend, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Always fun when you get an old guy, an old Jazz guy to come back into town, especially Rudy. I feel like a lot of fans kind of still have a place for him in their hearts, and he also, I mean, the Timberwolves are pretty good, and it should be, a pretty fun matchup at the Delta Center. I always think this is interesting. Like, so the hockey club also has a 4-game homestand coming up, and I'm like, how do they not stagger these more? Like, why are these teams at home at the same time? Nonetheless, hockey homestand starts Wednesday versus the Penguins, which is a huge game,
I'll
and
be at
that
it.
and
Yeah.
it'll be on TNT too, which I think is the first like one. I mean, they've had maybe like two or three nationally televised games the whole season, one being the opener. So big moment for the hockey club to hopefully turn things around after those two losses in a row. You'll be there. Any hopes and expectations for Penguins on Wednesday?
Hey man, the Penguins aren't very good. I mean,
Yeah, fair.
Utah's got Utah had a weird thing where they couldn't win at home for a while.
Yeah,
I think when you have a national TV audience and you're playing against a team like the Penguins, I mean, like think about like brands in the NHL. The Penguins are top five. I mean, that's like they're like the Boston Red Sox when it comes
yeah,
to NHL. Like everyone knows about the Penguins. They have a ton of fans everywhere. Sidney Crosby's one of the greatest players to ever play hockey, although my boy Ovechkin's better. But you got to get that win. Like go build your brand in front of a national audience. Beat a team with playoff experience. Make a statement. Like I feel like the hockey team is they're so young, so they're very inconsistent, right? Like it's you either get a really good result or a really discouraging result. And you would love to stack up some of those encouraging results, especially in these opportunities. I mean, you don't have that many opportunities to play in front of the whole country. And when
yeah.
you're on, you got a name reveal coming soon and you're building something new. Like these are the moments you really got to take advantage of. And I hope it's going to be Utah Yeti, but it sounds like there's some hurdles there. But well, let's see. I mean, I can't do Black Diamonds or something dumb like that. It's got to be Yeti for me.
I was gonna say, are you breaking news right there, Jackson? That the name reveal is coming soon?
No, no, no. I mean, just eventually, right? Like
It's got
it's
to
not.
happen at some point, right?
No, they're the hockey club. Like that's not going to be.
Yeah.
Everyone hates this new name already.
How long did your football team wait? Was it only a year before they went to Commanders?
It was 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
So July 2020 they dropped the old moniker and
Yeah,
football team, and then February it was 2/2/22.
that's right.
They had that awful
Ha
reveal.
ha!
It's just some inside baseball there, but I mean, I'm not trying to break any news here. I'm okay with the Commanders name now because like Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn have me like I used to be like so vehemently opposed to the Commanders name. The uniforms are still terrible, but like Commanders I can live with. Like they've made
Yeah.
it's grown on me, but not nonetheless.
Yes, excellent. I wanted to touch on that, but before we left the hockey club, and I'm glad we brought it up. Um, Next in the look ahead, Utah State looking to stay only 2 losses on the season. They have got a couple home games Wednesday, Saturday. UNLV, one of their only losses on the season, coming to Logan, and then New Mexico also coming to Logan next weekend. BYU men's basketball home versus Baylor. This is the one I wanted to touch on because Baylor came to Salt Lake the other day, beats Utah. Now they come to Provo, big test at the Marriott Center.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like they've been getting pretty great crowds for this team this season. Rock is showing up now that we're in full session for the winter semester. Rock showing up should be a banger this week against the Bears.
Yeah, for some reason BYU and Baylor have just kind of formed this organic rivalry within the Big 12. I think it's the football exposure early. Like, as soon as like BYU joins the Big 12 and a month later they play Baylor, and then they play Baylor the year after in football. And so I feel like being religious schools, like it's not like a mean-spirited rivalry. It's just like the two teams want to beat each other. They're just kind of like I don't want to say they're equals, but like there's intrigue there, right? And so BYU did beat Baylor in Provo last year. They're projected to win based on ESPN's analytics, but Baylor's really talented team. Like you said, like Edgecombe is a potential lottery guy. They got 5 dudes scoring in double figures. I mean, they're so talented, right? Scott Drew's one of the best coaches in the country. This is very much a BYU has to win these kind of games at home
Mm,
in order to kind of hold their ground in the Big 12. Talking to guys around the program, talking to other media members, the Marriott Center is such a tough place to play in that you have to take advantage of every single opportunity you have when you play there. And so having already lost to Texas Tech and still having Kansas coming in, like you can't
yeah.
really afford to drop any more games. You'd have to steal an unexpected road win. Like you'd have to go to West Virginia and win or like
Mm,
Iowa State win to kind of like make up for that. And so you got to win at the Marriott Center. Like I said with the hockey club, like you got to start winning at home. BYU's done a decent job at the Marriott Center this year. They did lose to Texas Tech. I don't know if you saw this, that there's no pet band anymore at
I think
basketball games.
yeah, I think you mentioned that to me, but then I was watching the women's game and they had it at the women's game.
Yeah, so they do it at the women's game, but not the men's games.
Okay.
And it's a whole thing right now. Like people are making a big deal online about it. I guess my opinion is like it's sad because I wish college basketball games always felt like college basketball. Like
Yeah.
there's something about being on campus and the students and like the energy and having a pep band and stuff like that that's just like so fun. But it sounds like, I mean, from what people are saying online, it sounds like Kevin Young didn't want it. And at this point, like, I mean, Kevin Young's bringing in all these recruits, like he's kind of building the program and in the image that he has planned. And so like it's a bummer for the students, but like it's the coach's call, right? Like you gave him the keys to the kingdom for a reason. He can't he can't be upset when he changes things. But I digress. Yeah, like you got to win this game against Baylor. You got to find a way to tap into. I mean, that BYU was pretty good on defense the other night. Like Cincinnati's offense
Yeah.
isn't great, but their defense is improving. They're starting to shoot the ball with more confidence. You might have unlocked something with Yegor and the way they've played with tempo. And this is a really good measuring stick game for BYU because I don't think we really know how good BYU is. And I think Baylor's the perfect opportunity to show exactly where they're at because they've been so up and down. They've had injuries. It's a new team. It's a new roster. Like it's weird it's weird to be in February almost and still not really know where this team's at. But I think this is the perfect opportunity. Like we are going to know exactly who this team is after playing Baylor. That's kind of what I'm expecting.
Well, and I could be wrong here, but I feel like it's probably one of the only chances that Jaegor's gonna have to play against like another potential lottery pick in conference play. So
Yeah.
he's got. I mean, there is a lot of stake, like just like you said, like where are these guys going to go in the draft? Where are these teams at in the Big 12? Where are they at when it comes to March Madness and all that? So very very interesting there. Also, I'm glad you mentioned the music, and I had a thought. If it was Kevin Young's idea, so Kevin Young came from Phoenix. Phoenix is where Steve Kerr complained about the quote unquote club house music being played all throughout NBA games. So maybe there's something to Kevin. Maybe Kevin Young is behind the house music in Phoenix too. Maybe we got to get Steve Kerr up on this, and
Go
get
get
that.
him.
But yeah, I guess he's just trying to bring that NBA club atmosphere to Provo, which, if that's what the guys want, if they're going to play better with that, all power to them.
Yeah, the thing kind of putting a bow on that, like the thing somebody said on Twitter, I have no idea how accurate this is, and so I'm not like trying to report anything here, but like this makes sense to me if this is the case. So the pep band, they don't do a lot of stuff early in the season for basketball because they have football.
Yeah,
And so because BYU wasn't going to have the full season with the pep band, Kevin was like, hey, let's just do away with it altogether. Like I don't want to have to adjust. Like
yeah,
the players have to adjust to playing with the music after not having played with it. Which like
makes sense. Yeah,
that makes sense. Like
yeah.
that's not the worst thing in the world. I feel for the kids though because that's such a big deal, and I hope they can figure out some sort of happy medium, maybe like a compromise of sorts. But like I said before, like Kevin Young's in charge. Like these are the tough decisions you have to make as silly as it's right. But like
Yeah.
what I mean, you gotta you gotta take it with for what it is. So
That is fair. So after that game on Tuesday against Baylor, BYU hitting the road once again, take on UCF, looking for another, hopefully to stack those Big 12 road wins. And then Utah at home versus Cincinnati. We're kind of flipping games here, I guess. These teams are just they'll come for one and stay for the other. And then they'll go on the road as well to Oklahoma State. So good luck to the running Utes. And lastly, I want to touch a bit more on Utah women's basketball. They've got just one game this week against Arizona on Friday. And like I mentioned, they beat BYU women's basketball, who is now looking to snap a four-game losing streak versus Colorado at home on Wednesday. So for more on that, we go to our winners and losers this week. And for our first winner, I want to give a shout out to Gianna Neepkins. Junior on the Utah women's basketball team, dropping career highs in points in back-to-back games for the Utes this week. First 30 points, then 32 points. Went like 6 for 7 or something on threes again in the game against BYU. So great stuff there. It's always fun to see like an up and coming player like this. Somebody, for example, like you look at the guys on BYU's men's team, Yegor. We knew these guys are going to be good, but you don't with the women's game especially. You don't have this kind of level of recruiting and level of prestige and hype around players. So it's always fun. You get to see, a player like Shaylee Gonzalez came through a few years ago at BYU, right? You had Alyssa Peely, who was able to transfer here for Utah. And these players kind of come up and they're able to, make their mark and have their identity here on the game. And Gianna looks like she's kind of making a run as well. Who knows if, the WNBA or professional basketball is in her future, but want to give a shout out to her. And then our other winner, once again, while the Jazz keep losing games, they'll be getting our winner for their lottery odds. Like I mentioned, second best. Well, technically, the bottom three all get the same odds, but they are in second place as far as lottery odds go, behind your wonderful Washington Wizards, and hopefully they stay there. 1, 2, or 3 is where you want to be.
yeah, just get a top three pick and everything changes.
Exactly. And lastly, we head to our losers, which we start out with. We'll go hockey club first. Actually, they've kind of they had this streak going with road games for a bit. I think they won like 8 or 9 in a row on the road. That is no longer the case. They've lost 2 in a row on the road. Hopefully, as you mentioned, they can replace that with winning streaks at home, which is how it should usually be. There was something weird going on with the team earlier in the season, and they were winning on the road instead of at home. Not the case anymore. So, got bye bye goes that road advantage. And lastly, our final loser. University of Utah, except for women's basketball, like I mentioned. But the men's basketball team losing 2 in a row. And lastly, our friend Dalton Kincaid on the Buffalo Bills. Fingertips on a desperation heave from Josh Allen late in the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Couldn't get his hands around it, could not bring that ball down. Hate to see it for a former local star. Hate to see it for our former Ute. And I think the whole state. I mean, certainly the whole state of New York, the whole state of Buffalo, but some fans here in Utah as well, just kind of let out the big after that one when it was so close, and you hate to see it, especially like you mentioned, the Chiefs. Come on, they've been there, right? Everyone's talking about the three-peat. It's never been done before. Do we really want it to happen now with this team?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They've become the villains, right? Like they've
Yeah.
just embraced that. Like when Mahomes came into the league, he was awesome, right? When Travis Kelce was catching passes from Alex Smith, he was awesome. They've become like the bad boys. Like they've gone from being the Chiefs to the Raiders, right? Where
Mm.
like they're embracing the edge, and it's so not endearing. And for an Andy Reid team, it's kind of surprising because he's this like affable, like gentle giant almost. And I feel for Dalton, man. Like he's a good dude. Like we have some mutual friends. Um, just such a bummer. It's a bummer, especially because like if you looked at the play, I know the Chiefs brought like crazy pressure and
Yeah.
Josh Allen had like no time to, but he had Shakir wide open in the flat, and that would have like basically won the game had he converted there. And so, and that's a play that Allen like that had been like his first read on like a similar situation earlier, like. And so I don't think Dalton like expected to have to try and save the game
Oh,
right there.
definitely not. Yeah.
Like that was it's kind of unfair, but like listen, you're in the NFL, you got to catch balls, right? Like
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying too.
just it's such a bummer, man. Like I just when the Commanders lost, I was bummed because I'll be in New Orleans for some Super Bowl media stuff, and I was like, oh,
Oh,
please
nice.
don't be Eagles Chiefs. Like I don't want to like this. That just be so boring. Like you want to have like you want there to be some intrigue and excitement, right? I guess the three-peat is cool. I guess the Saquon aspect is cool if you like that kind of thing. I don't, but like it's just the Bills let America down, and by that I mean they gave it their best shot. I still think Allen got the first down on the sneak that they didn't give him, but such a bummer, man. Just isn't it the worst when the bad guys win? Like, isn't just there's a reason why that never happens in movies, right? Like,
That's what I've heard. Yeah. Yeah, well, the countdown begins 2 weeks till the big game. It will be Eagles Chiefs. On the Eagles side, we've got our boy Britton Covey, former Ute, on special teams mostly there, and then like you mentioned, Big Red, ironically Big Red, BYU alum Andy Reid with the Chiefs. I know that there's been some BYU guys going in and out of the Chiefs roster as well. They have any guys on there right now?
yeah, Kingsley Suamataia,
That's right. Yeah, the lineman. Yeah.
yeah, he was their second round pick last year. He started as their starting left tackle and just got bullied. Like it was that's all I'll say
Yeah.
but yeah, he hasn't played very well this year. He's a bench guy. I think he'll develop and be something on their line eventually. But and then for the Eagles, you got Tanner McKee as well. Not
Ah,
necessarily Utah top,
yes.
but
Yes.
Latter-day Saint, returned missionary, former Stanford Cardinal player. What do they call it? I mean, they're not Cardinals, are they? Is it just like a Cardinal player? Yes,
I
like
am Cardinal alum.
I think Cardinal alum Tanner McKee, super genius. But yeah, that's
I am Tree. I am Groot.
hey, I would have preferred Bobby Wagner and Michael Davis and Brian Johnson
Uh,
representing Utah time.
you're telling me, brother.
But I guess we can live with Phil. No, we can't. Like, hey, shout out to Britton Covey though. Awesome guy. I mean, love his story and hope he'll get some returns in the Super Bowl because he's been on IR most of the year and he didn't return any punts today. I mean, I don't think he was active today, so hopefully he gets some time for the Super Bowl because it'd be cool to see him play. But go Chiefs, I guess he said really sadly.
Re reluctantly, sad.
Very
Yeah.
bluntly.
Well, now that we know that you'll be down there, we'll have to have you back on afterwards so you can share some of your experience down in Nolens, down hit up that French Quarter. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm gonna need a chaperone down there. I don't trust. I'm just kidding.
Rusty, where you at?
I'll be there with Rusty, so it'll be a
Okay.
it'll be a movie, as they say.
As they say. Wonderful. Well, we look forward to it, and we look forward to talking with you guys next week. Thanks for hanging around.